let's call together, a call to order, a special meeting of the Board of Education. At this time, we should say the pledge. Mrs. Vaughn, would you like to lead us in the pledge today? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We just said that so slow.
We did, well, especially for you, yes. All right, we have a couple orders, things that we were going to take care of here today. But first, since Mrs. Cobell is not here, Mrs. Vaughn, would you serve as the secretary for
Happy to.
today in her absence?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. With that, we need to move on to a couple board business pieces about our board vacancy. Superintendent Bean, would you like to talk a
Sure.
little bit about our bylaw 2404?
Sure, so bylaw 2404 speaks to what the board will do in the event that there's a vacancy on the board that the board has to fill. It typically would involve a posting to the public, having candidates or interested candidates submit materials, having the board review those materials, interviewing candidates, and eventually making a selection. This vacancy is very different than our typical vacancy. This vacancy is a function of law. Mrs. Vonk, she applied for and was elected by the community to the remaining 2 years of the term that Mrs. Atwater previously held and that Mr. Mashad was appointed to. The law says upon certification of the election and acceptance of office, Mrs. Vonk takes that office, and the person who was temporarily filling that, Mr. Mashad, is no longer in that seat. Well, that created a vacancy of Mrs. Vonk's seat, which has just 25 days left on it. So we're filling a 25-day vacancy. So it doesn't make sense to go through all the things that would be outlined in bylaw 2404, where we would be appointing someone to sit in that position for quite some time. And since Mr. Mashad has been on the board, it would make sense, and he's been re-elected to the board, it would make sense to fill that position, I think, with Mr. Mashad would be my recommendation. So as a result, you need to suspend bylaw 2404 and then take action on the consideration and appointment for someone.
Excellent. So at this time, I think I should have a motion that we suspend the bylaw 2404. Do I have a motion on that?
I move we suspend bylaw 2404.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Would you like us to be all in favor, or should we have a voice vote?
Let's just do voice vote, just to be safe.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Vaughn, would you like to lead that? Since you're the secretary now.
Yes, Dr. Clausen?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
I would say yes, but I wasn't hearing the whole time.
I don't.
think I would.
Can we suspend the bylaw to allow us to manipulate our process a little bit,
Yes,
to allow
yes,
Mr.
absolutely.
Mashad to take over for that complicated situation?
Okay, I knew what it was about, but
Yes. Mrs. Tryon?
Yes.
Mrs. Vonk, yes. Mrs. Callahan?
Yes. Okay. And then now we need to move over to the board vacancy consideration and appointment. So at this point, I think I'd like to have someone make a motion for CJ Mashad. Do I have to say correctly his name? Do we need someone to say his name?
Say his name.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion of that nature?
I move we appoint CJ Mashad to the open vacancy for the duration of that term.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
a second.
And could we have a roll call?
Yes. Dr. Clausen?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mrs. Tryon?
Yes.
Mrs. Vonk, yes. Mrs. Callahan?
Yes. Okay. At this time, do we need to take some action?
If CJ would like to come up and take the acceptance of office, and I'll do the oath of office, we can then be seated at the table. So, sign and date. Okay, and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Member of Board of Education
of the office of Member of Board of Education,
of Forest Hills Public Schools,
Forest Hills Public Schools,
Kent County, Michigan,
Kent County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Sign here, please. We're all set.
Okay?
Here.
All right.
Thank you all. Thank you.
And
And I got a picture so you can share it with Jim.
Yes, exactly. Excellent, all right, well then, the next thing we need to do is we need to approve our minutes from the last regular meeting of the Board of Education, and then we'll move into public comment. So could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last regular meeting of the Board of Education?
Make a motion to approve the meetings, oh, sorry,
No,
go
that's
ahead.
okay.
You're go for it.
Yes.
Approve the meeting minutes, from the last meeting.
And a second?
Second.
And would you like to do a roll call vote? Or all in favor, can we do that? Let's say all in favor? Okay, and at this time, we will open up if there are any public comments, which I don't see any guests here. So I think we'll move right into our discussion items.
Wonderful. Well, strategic planning, we want to provide an update. Jim is here with us today to talk about where we are, and Suzanne has also been working with Jim and with Beth, Beth Dornan, which has been helping a little bit with some of our wordsmithing and communication ideas around elements of the strategic plan. And we also have just a brief presentation on some slides here to work our way through as well. We just thought having some things visually would be helpful for everyone on that. So do we want to go through the slide deck first and then
I think kind
engage Jim on
of
that?
maybe
Or
be
move on?
interactive.
Yeah, we'll be
as
interactive
you
as
go.
we go. Okay, good.
So I think when we look at this, this slide presentation is not really a presentation so much as a working
Yep.
document that I've been trying to pull things together from the different conversations that some of you participated in those groups earlier on. So I guess this will be I'm leaving this behind today.
Yes,
So this is Dan's
wonderful.
PowerPoint presentation. So as you're looking through this, look at this as a working document more than us just looking at what's on a whiteboard. So there are a few slides in here that have notes. These would be notes to me and you, if you
Yep.
will. This is not like I'm presenting to the public my
Right.
strategic plan.
Right.
So I thought we could work through this a little bit today. I guess my setup of this would be, I'm hoping that the takeaway for the group here is that everybody's fully aligned on what the process was that Jim outlined at the beginning and we've started, to make sure everybody understands what the process was and is, where we are in the process and what's coming next with those different stakeholders that have been involved. So it's the process piece, and it has some interaction with Jim so that you can make sure you all feel comfortable with the process, depending on what your role was in that.
Yep.
And then secondly, to that, have a full understanding of what the board member's role is in this process, and at what point we ask questions, or when are we involved in it, when are we getting report outs
Yep.
on it, and what our role is. And then the final piece is, and this probably goes into some of the things we'll do later today, but this accountability piece, I think that on all of the strategic vision, a lot of this, like we said the last time we were here, was, okay, great, yeah, of course that's our winning aspiration, but it's more about the accountability and how does this work in the district, and how are we getting report outs knowing that this is fine, that we've got all this fuzzy vision stuff out there, but what is Dan reporting back to us, and where do we balance our role as we're up here, but we still need to know that the rubber's meeting the road, and what are the accountability pieces. So I would say, where the process, where we are, and the board role, and how do we hold the superintendent accountable. That was my goal, that we come out of today. So not necessarily saying, oh, where are we on that particular thing, but make sure everybody's aligned on that.
Yeah,
Okay?
exactly.
So I would like you guys to kind of take it away, and then if you want to just click through some
Sure,
of those as you go,
Sure.
I'll interject as
Absolutely.
needed.
So, again, we've used the metaphor of a journey to talk about this process, that when you, the first step in beginning a journey to some place is to take stock of where are we currently at, and we've done that work on our current state. And Jim helped us to collect that information from a big cross-section of stakeholders that we had, and also looking at our climate and culture survey data and pulling a lot of those pieces together. Then the work has really moved to where is it that we want to go, and talking about that future state of where it is that we want to go, and trying to be as clear as we can about that future state. And that's where the winning aspiration comes into play. And that's also where we've been, the latest work has been around that winning aspiration. And I shared with you a version of that winning aspiration the last time that we met, and we had some discussion around that. And we've been playing with that a little bit more since then. One of the things that we've talked about doing is, and we have plans to do this here in January, is to have, I'll just call it, and Jim, you chime in here, is to sort of have Jim and Beth focus group this winning aspiration with small groups to see, are people hearing and seeing the same thing from these words? And are these words inspiring and something that describes our future state in a way that people get excited about and that there's alignment around? What we talked about and what we want to do is to remove myself from that process and really focus group it with our stakeholders, who again represent a cross-section of our institution and our community, and to have them speak freely about it. We want to get that information in and pull that in to say, okay, yep, we're seeing this, or there are more tweaks that we may need to make on that.
The one other thing I would add to that is part of it is testing out the words, but these become your ambassadors
Yes.
of this work going forward, so.
Yeah, just to give it some context, so first of all, did you talk about Beth Dornan at all?
Actually, only Kristen would probably know.
So,
about
okay,
that.
I just want to, if I can
Yeah.
back up a little
Thank
bit.
Yeah.
you, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
you know, we've talked about it, and we discussed early on that because you are a school district, you've got so many stakeholders out there across the community, teachers, parents, students. One of the key pieces of your evolution up to where you want to go has to be the communication strategy. You've got to get people bought in. And to that end, we brought on Beth Dornan. Beth is a partner of mine. She's worked with me for years at Amway. She's currently a professor at GVSU. Beth has years and years of global experience with communication, public relations. She's just got so much experience. And that's why I asked her to join me for the communication strategy of this piece. So she's been working now with us for a couple of months. You know, what we want to do with the focus groups, and right now we're planning, I think our goal is to have 4 to 6 groups or something like that. And we're trying to do it all on 2 days in January, just so we can kind of concentrate on it. But we will do that in January. It is, as Dan said, getting feedback on the winning aspiration, but it's actually bigger than that, because the other thing is we want to work through the case for change. And we want to get feedback on how powerful that case for change is. Does it represent, you know, the compelling arguments that people respond to and that people understand? Because the two have to go together, and that case for change is going to be absolutely critical. So our goal would be, by the time we're through January, that we will have not only the aspirational statement pretty much nailed down, but we'll have, I think, the case for change really put together, and then we put that into
a final communication strategy with all of your constituents. And we started this a little bit actually at the last session we did was like 2 months ago, I think.
Yes.
But we, with those groups, 2 groups of 17, but we listed out, I think they came up with 6 or 7 constituent groups, teachers, parents, hiring managers in the
Employers.
community, I mean, universities, colleges. And we actually started that process a little bit, basically for each one of those, what are their concerns, right? What's their perspective going to be, and how do we need to address those, and what messaging do we tailor for them? And how, it gets into the nitty gritty of how do we communicate with them, what's the media, what's the timing, I mean, the whole bit, that'll all be laid out as we get into February, basically. So that then, you can take it on the road in any way that you need to do it, to start getting the buy-in out there that has to get done.
The interest, not to put the cart before the horse, but the interesting thing too is that when Beth, which Jim didn't even realize this, but Beth has experience working with the Education Foundation up in Rockford Public Schools. So I would say that meeting could have been about 10 seconds long.
Right.
Because when she came in, she already knew, like, okay, you need a case for support for what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Not just, she's thinking like from that fundraising piece, which this should ring a bell to some of us who have been around here, like the foundation needs a case for support. But that would be one of our audience members, that they need to understand, where is the district going?
Right.
Where are you going? And as an employee, you need to know, where are you going down the road? And then we get into the work streams and all of those other pieces of it.
Right.
So having her help with that piece of it. But I really think that the idea that you came up with of this focus group piece, because there are some set meetings with those 2 groups of 17. Those groups are coming together in large group already. That's on the calendar. So this focus group is separate from that. So with the same people, but they'll say,
It's
oh,
small
can you come?
conversational.
Yeah,
Yep.
because they're hungry from what
Yes.
you've heard individually, and then other people said, well, okay, what do we do next? They're bought into the future of the district from where they're all coming from, which is good.
Yep.
So.
Curious, who's in the focus group? Like, what is the makeup of the 17 people?
Sure.
I don't mean
No.
specifics,
Yeah,
not just
I
like
can show
There
you
are
the
17 people in
students,
difference in the
teachers.
focus groups.
Yep.
parents, I mean, like, how many of each?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have that listed.
Yep.
So a focus group is different than the group that is
Yes.
participating,
But
just
yes.
so Kristen knows.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
there are not 17 people in the focus group.
but you were gonna have some of these.
Yes.
It's fine, but there's
these
2 different groups.
The
January
January group is
Right.
different.
Okay, I'm not in a focus group.
No, there's 2 groups of
That's what I'm
17
saying, right, and
that
then
we've
there's a
worked
focus
with
group.
so far.
Right.
Now we will have separate focus groups,
Exactly.
and it's up to you to determine who
Some
that is.
race people
Yep.
would be in that.
Yep.
Yeah, but then there could be additional.
But you
people
still have
that-
But
one
it's-
question, how are you going to compile your focus groups? How do you determine who's in what? Where are we drawing from and what do they look like?
We'll do as much of a cross-section as we can, but we want the groups to be small.
Yep.
So everyone in that group around the table is gonna be responding, reacting.
But remember when we talked about what our university's gonna think, what our employers gonna think? Are we gonna reach to our outside community or just stay in-house again? Are we gonna reach out to some of our outer tier, people? Uncertain, unknown yet, still thinking about it?
Yes, still thinking.
I think the idea though, the principle is to do it right.
Right.
You need the breadth of stakeholders out there.
Which
Right,
would be
especially
people
anybody-
outside our
I would say
normal-
anybody that you're designing communications for as a target, you should be, they should be included if they can,
Right.
in some way, shape,
How, can I ask, how detailed is, like, what is involved in the case for change? Like, what is that, how detailed is that? If that's what we're wanting to see, what people, how they react to it, what they think about it, how detailed is that? Is that just sort of,
One pager.
okay, so a one-pager, but is it still 30,000 foot, sort of like experiential learning? Experiential is the word I was thinking.
Yeah.
Or is it, this is what we're going to do, like actual specific things?
No.
Well, first of all, it's still being formulated, okay, so Beth is kind of polishing all that right now, but I'd say it's maybe an and not an or. It starts out with like a 1-pager or a 1.5-pager. But we've got a lot of information and data underneath that we can go to if we have to, right? So there's opportunities to drill down on it. And that's, I think, essentially what we will have, and I think that's what you'll need as well. If you're in front of a big group, you don't want to be just at the 30,000 foot level. You got to be able to have, so the whole thing's about proof statements, right? Data and proof statements that are going to say, oh yeah, I get that.
But not all the way to the point of, I'll use this as an example, not all the way to the point of, and what do you think about us opening a new Goodwill in June? Or
No.
launching a, it's not to that level of
No.
a project or something like that.
So more 30,000 foot.
Yeah.
Let me go through, Suzanne did a wonderful job in taking our conversations of late and also understanding sort of this process, of the steps of the process, and outlining them on these slides. So this has been a great gift. And I just want to run through this quickly so you get an idea. We can come back to any one of these slides, but just to give you a sense of where we are here. So this is a timeline of where we've been thus far, looking at our current state, trying to outline our desired state. We're working on this case for support now. We will move into this piece of, once we have that case for support, what's our gap between our current state and where we want to be, and what's the prioritization work we want to go through? Thank you. And then the specific work plan, and Dr. Foster, I think you might be speaking to some of those elements that we do get into the nitty-gritty to say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to reallocate resources and staff and personnel to achieve these things in those ways. That's going to be the work plan.
Yeah, can I just emphasize that, because I've had conversations with a couple of you about the concern about that. You and I, that's the first thing we talked about the first time we met, right?
Right?
I'm just determined that strategy without work plans and executions and milestones and metrics is an absolute waste of time. And I try to not be involved in that. And I know Dan and Suzanne have been very much in agreement that, and that's where the rubber meets the road. I know it's a little frustrating with the time this is taking, but I don't believe you can just jump to that and start doing it, because you'll get some things done, but your likelihood of doing the right things in the right way at the right time is pretty low. So we're trying to do all this prep work to get us to where, when we get to that in the spring, we start you identify what really are the first 3 things that you got to get done, right?
Yep.
And then that becomes project management, basically,
Yep.
right? What are you trying to get done? What are the milestones? Who's responsible for what? And reporting, I mean, I would think reporting back to you, this body, a lot of what's our progress, what's working, what's not,
And I
and
think
knocking those things off.
that's one of the things that since we've never gone through this process before, we've gone to, we're going to launch a new thing, and then we've gotten up to, look at a construction project as an example. There's a lot of pre-work that's happened in that, and then we've gotten a report out saying, we're gonna renovate Orchard View, and it's gonna be, 8 steps, 8 A and Bs,
25 months, you're right,
25
it's
months.
about 9.
So, that was, when we were getting that, we're saying, okay, a work plan has been developed.
Yeah.
But way back, it was, we want to have learning environments that are more blah, 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 all of
Right.
that. But what we never did was the pre piece of this, which was the strategic plan.
Right.
So we've done things that are good along the way, but we're taking a little bit more time to get to that. And I really think the one question you asked when we sat in the office was, okay, Dan, this is your vision. Is everybody else on board with
Yeah.
this? And if we can't say everybody in your organization is on board with this,
Yep.
when you said, are there enough teachers involved? At the end of the day, 1,000 staff members have to be involved.
Yep.
Not necessarily in sitting in a focus group, but they have to be all behind the mission and the vision. It can't be us coming up with all these, this would be a great thing to do. This is a thing that takes time for the organization. I use the organization as a big community of
Yep.
people have to be on board with it. So as impatient as I am,
Yes.
I think that, yes.
No,
yes.
I agree, I'm impatient too on that, but it's
But
doing that front
Doing
work.
it, and,
Yep.
yes.
And also for me, I think realistically, that kind of buy-in, which is so important, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not gonna happen from some case statements and proof points. That'll get some people on board, but especially based on history, there's gonna be a lot of skepticism. So you start, and you succeed at something and you build and that brings more people. You just keep doing it consistently, and as you have successes, more people get on board. I mean, I did big changes like this in my career at Amway with organizations, and I figured it's going to take me 2 to 3 years before people start believing in it, everybody does it about it. That's reality. It's not going to happen overnight. You just got to stick to the plan and do it.
Well, just a little history, at a much smaller scale, we were trying to work with the foundation to kind of do this exact same thing years ago, and we kept pushing back on Dan saying, what is getting in your way? He said, my staff's not on board, and for us to push this now when they're not there yet, and it's been fun, like Dr. Foston saying, Central wants to be a little bit more like Northern. We never would have heard that 5 years ago. That was crazy stuff, Project Nexus for people that were nuts.
Right.
So it's been time, and it's very cool to see that evolve on a broader scale.
Yeah.
There is, so the appetite is there in places, but again, having that, where are we going? Because what you don't want is people going off the rails and,
Right.
yeah, so, all right, keep going.
So our current mission and vision, our mission, our purpose, why we exist, we focus a lot on knowledge, skills, and experiences. That's something that we're looking for all of our learners to acquire. Our vision, we've seen these 5 simple words here for some time. This process is not remaking this, but it's saying, how do we get to this spot and have that laid out in a strategic work plan on all of that.
You know, Dan, one of the things that strikes me with that too is in one of our conversations, because you guys have started this in some of your programs and pockets already, and I think what I heard you say was like, this is really about scale. How do we take that stuff and scale it?
Yes.
Right? That's fundamentally what you're trying to do. You're not trying to recreate the wheel, you're trying to scale it.
That's exactly, you've got it right. Yep, and that's been sort of the confounding thing. You're exactly right. We have our guiding principles, our 8 guiding principles, and I believe I've counted all of our belief bullets before. There's 53 of them here, if I've counted correctly. Don't quote me on that at the moment. But again, these are our sort of our cultural touchstones along the way. I was talking with a couple of teachers about these this morning on exactly this as we were working through a little issue. So these are great things to constantly return to and keep ourselves grounded in these principles as we have here. Here's our winning aspiration, sort of our latest draft. I will just read it, not that we need to wordsmith it all today, because this is going to change again and again and again. We're going to focus group this, but just so you can see a little bit. We've got a date out here, part of a SMART rule. By 2026, Forest Hills Public Schools will be a leader in student-centered experiential learning. We will inspire all students to imagine what's possible, developing skills as they explore interests and create their own path to achievement in learning and life. Building on early successes in pilot programs, our school communities will do this by providing opportunities for students to engage in experiences to explore interests, developing skills such as communication, critical thinking, creativity, citizenship, compassion, and composure, and encouraging curiosity and a passion for lifelong learning while maintaining rigorous academic standards. So that's where we are. Beth has taken a look at this, as Jim's talked about Beth Dorman before, and helped with some of these things. We've, again, I forget who said this famous quote, if I had more time, I would have written less. And they're sort of trying to come up with economizing some of these words here to get at some of the points, so you can see some of that. This is one of the things that we will be, can I use the word, sort of focus grouping, if you will, that we'll be putting out there as a test case and getting reactions on it. Jim, anything else you want to say on this here? No?
I love that second bullet point. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, this just feels like a very different statement than what we looked at.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that it literally is a different statement, it is different.
But it gives you a different feeling now?
It feels, it feels really
Says it?
measurable, it
Good.
feels
Yeah.
like you could really put some action plan behind it.
And the thing I found interesting was, again, when Beth walked in and said, here, I've got something, and she had a couple drafts to look at, and she had cultivating possibility as we went through, like, where are we going, what's our communication, and we landed on that before, and she had almost exactly the words cultivating possibility, because she said, everything I've heard from conversation and reading all the notes and everything. So we've had this is the beginning of telling that story in a little bit. It's sort of like you have to have your mission, make it succinct, but then you have to expand it again to start making the case for support.
Yeah.
So that's our story.
Let me just
Stick it
move
to it.
on some things a little bit more quickly to see what is coming. So, talking to key stakeholders here about what we've got there and keeping our students at the center of all of this work. This moves on to, and Suzanne, you chime in here.
This is my place.
Yeah,
This is
really
part of
these
my-
core competencies to say, all right, if assume we get to agreement around these things, and maybe that changes the wording a little bit more as we go through, but when we get to the agreement on that, then it's saying, how do we go out, how do we execute, how do we scale up on all these things? What things do we need to put in place? What are the implications for instruction? What's the implications for our culture, for learning? Our professional learning culture for our staff, what do they need support and how do they need to be equipped differently or at a bigger scale? And how do we engage everyone in this work as we go along?
So the only thing, and you can see my little footnote there, not that you'll never talk to me again, but when you look at the culture and climate survey, we were saying we've got to communicate with all these stakeholders. How do we know if we're doing it? Well, we already have a measurement, and that is the culture and climate survey. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, we're doing all this focus group and everything, but at the end of the day, if we look at question number 3, item 4, and we're at 80%, if next year we're at 70%, that's bad. If we're at 90%, that's good. So we already have a mechanism in place. And when I looked at those buckets, and the questions in there, instruction is just that. Like, what are we doing in the classes? And we can then, to get to the point of the things we do, the programs we have, fill the instruction bucket. Are we doing great? Are we doing awful? Where are we in the instruction bucket? What are we doing? Culture for learning, it's interesting when you look through that survey, that's all about that environment that gets to the engagement. It's a place where your kid gets up and they want to be at school. And if they're not, we've got a problem. So how full is the bucket? If they don't get out of bed and want to go to school, we don't have a good culture for learning. If they can't wait to get there and do whatever it is, then we're good. Professional learning, and that's where when we say, oh, woe is me, we've got a talent pipeline, what are we gonna do? That's a tactical thing that we've been talking about for decades. At the end of the day, we set a goal out there for professional learning culture. We will have people that want to work here because we have a professional learning culture. We fill that bucket for them, and then they get their bucket filled. And then engagement, I didn't even want to use the word communication, but engagement that's everybody. Are we communicating, as Jim was saying? How are we getting the word out to School News Network, to the colleges, to the businesses, to the universities, and their measurements in those, the surveys. So that's how, you can do whatever you want with your competencies and your buckets as you proceed. But this to me seemed like a no-brainer as the big buckets to start with.
I almost want to see an S bucket added so we can make spice.
Spice.
Add a little spice.
Spice, yes.
So then it's really on the action steps and filling these buckets, looking at these metrics.
These
that
are
we
my
have
teacher
out there.
directions for him.
Thank you. Suzanne is leaving us with a wonderful gift. And again, looking at these pieces along the way as she just talked about on this. And then you want to speak to these sort of the Harvey balls on this.
So Jim loves Harvey balls.
That's what the thing on the right is called.
Yes,
This thing
so
here is a ball.
what you do, and I'll let Jim explain it, but when you say, these are the things that that this is important, this is what we have to be good at. So I guess if you could explain the benefit of approaching something, the simplicity of a Harvey ball, and then also, who is the one that determines how full the Harvey ball is? So if you could explain Harvey balls to everybody.
Why is that a Harvey ball?
He's gonna explain it to you.
Because some guy named Harvey, I guess, invented these and probably patented them and became a millionaire based on
It's
it.
a circle.
On pie charts?
It's a pie chart.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
this is out of context. So you
Yes.
would normally have 20 different capabilities.
Yeah.
And there's the way we do it is there's a current state and a future state. And the reason we use this simple technique for assessing the the status, current status and where the future status needs to be, is it keeps you from going down rabbit holes about 28% or 34%, which is value added. So it's either, if it's full, that means that you're so great at it that it's a competitive advantage for you. 3/4 full means you're really good at it. Half full means that you're maybe competent, okay. Quarter full, you do it, but you're not great. And if it's empty, you're like, you got a big problem, you're nowhere with it. And so what you do basically is whatever these, I'm sure we'll have more than what you came up with, but I like
This
the
is
big
like the
buckets.
big
There's
bucket, and
things
then
in
you
there.
can
What are
have
the
things
big
within
things?
it, right?
And what you'll want to do is identify with each of those, where are you today, using this easy, quick concept. There's a lot of discussion around it. We take a lot of notes so we understand the why. You say that about it. Then you look at those same capabilities in the context of the future being what your goal is. So to really accomplish what you've stated you want to become, how do these things, which of these things have to change? And we probably will identify some gaps and capabilities that must be closed to get to where you want to go. There are a number of them that will stay the same, just
Because you can't, it's not
Keep
like
the wheels
everything
on the
has
bus,
to get
it's
to
okay.
100%.
there might be some capabilities that, a couple that you think you need to add that you don't have today, that maybe have to be added.
Yep.
Maybe there's a couple that you do today that you can de-emphasize it. I mean, I don't know how that turns out. In the end, you get a comprehensive gap analysis between the capabilities, what you do today to make it all happen, and what you need to be doing to accomplish your goal. And then the last thing is prioritizing all of that. Because I'm a big believer, if you choose to focus on really focus on more than 3 things, you will not get anything done. So what we do then is we go through a process of prioritizing based on a few things. One is, and this is if I had the chart here, I could show it to you, but one is we graph it based on, let's say the y-axis is degree of impact to your strategic goal, high and down to low. X-axis is how difficult is it to close that gap? How much, and another way to translate that is how much investment is it going to take? Not just money, but talent, time, right? So you plot things out, and then the third axis quadrant you look at is timing and sequencing. Some things need to be done urgently, and some things, we could get to this down the road a ways. And out of that, you identify what are the 2 or 3 big priorities that you're going to start with, that you're going to focus on. Doesn't mean you ignore the rest of it, but differential investment on those 3 things. And then you figure out where you go from there and how do you start doing it.
So just to go through, if you look through the slide deck right now, the examples are just in those big categories. But to be clear, it wouldn't just be saying, oh, instruction overall over here. The group will have to say, okay, these are the things, but even within that, you can't have 80 things.
I mean, I would expect, I'm just making this up,
Right.
I would expect you to have teacher recruitment, teacher retention,
Right.
teacher development. There's 3 right away that I
That
would
would
guess
be
you
in
have.
a category.
I mean,
And,
Yeah, I don't know if you'd have things like transportation on the list, but you might. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. Building maintenance, I don't
Maybe
know.
the competence
Instruction
piece.
quality.
And you'd have to figure out which.
A ball for each one of those items.
Yeah.
That you could say,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, again, instruction is the large core competency. There might be a ball for experiential learning,
Yeah.
how are we doing on that? There might be a ball that has, let's say we talk about our kids and our teachers really need to get out of the classroom, need to go out into the community. So it's community-based learning in some way, shape, or form, just for instance.
Mhm.
There might be a ball
And we
on
would
that.
say, wow, okay, and then let's also define who the we is. Who does Dan need to have determining how full the balls are? Who typically does this in an organization?
I usually, and so I do this a lot with companies and I do a lot with nonprofits. I usually do the initial assessment with the staff, whoever the staff are, not with the board, because the staff
Actually, no.
really is like, man, they live it.
Yes.
But then you bring it to the, whatever it is, if it's a
Yep.
board or the management team or whatever it is, And then you go through it all again with them and the reasons why and get their buy-in or their criticisms, their changes or whatever. In the end, you gotta have a gap assessment that everybody has a consensus around, right? Might be a little disagreements here and there, but basically, this is what we all believe to be
So
true.
this is not something that we at this table have to do. It's reported to
Go
us,
report,
but,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the people, so that gets a little bit to your point of the people that are actually doing it. It can't be up to us saying, you need to go do more teaching outside, and teachers are going, yeah, no, I don't wanna do that. Or the teachers are, it's gotta come from the people in the organization, because ultimately, if they're the ones that have to, we have to give them the resources to fill their buckets, but they have to decide
Yep.
how empty or full the bucket is.
And it is subjective. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Because if you ask kids this versus
Right.
asking teachers this about appropriate level of challenge, you're gonna get different answers. So do you
Exactly.
reach out to different groups to make sure that that ball ultimately has some sort of consensus across larger groups?
Yeah, I would, we haven't really talked about that, but like what you were just saying, because if, at the end of this process, with the teams that you have put together and with the school board, you come up with your 3 big priorities and what you're gonna do, and the teachers look at that and go, that's crazy, I didn't do one of that.
And that would never happen.
You're sunk already. So I think that there's, just because of the environment that you are in, that there's, I think, maybe even more of, I don't know if we really do focus groups, but you gotta keep pressure testing this stuff all the way along, right? And you wanna build, building allies builds more allies. So you wanna get, I don't know, if it was me, if it was employees, I would want a key group of employee influencers that I want to get bought into this and they're going to be ambassadors for this.
Yep.
Maybe you got a group of teachers that you can say that these are the guys we're going to start with, these people, right? But it's just this process of getting buy-in and building support. You're absolutely right. If it's just done in a smoke-filled room and then thrown out there, not going.
So again, the idea is under each core competency, we'll have, multiple of these pie charts, Harvey balls, however you want to call them, where it's a consensus of stakeholders, and then it's reported out to the board here, and other groups as well. So you just see, again, more examples of what we're talking about here and what can be hidden. Accountability is a really important piece on this. It involves that responsibility and the support that comes through this, and having this be something that we can say to the whole organization, this is how we're aligning our work and how we're aligning our resources, and there's a whole accountability feedback loop on all of this as we go. And again, I think this piece that we've talked about of short, medium, and long range, we need to be clear about that. As Jim just talked about, pressure testing some things as we go and making adjustments as we go along the way.
So just to be clear on that, you'll be bringing updates on a regular
Yes,
basis to the board
yes.
in very consistent buckets.
Yep,
Here's
right,
your-
right. So there's so the board should be getting accustomed to sort of a nomenclature system, if you will, that we see all these things.
And it could be a longer discussion like this, on a day like this, but there's no reason in your superintendent
Right.
update, when everybody's together every Tuesday,
Yep.
Wednesday, once a month,
Right?
that you say, oh yeah, we did the
Focus,
focus
yep.
groups, this is what we learned. And then the
Yep.
next month you say, yep, we're prioritizing, and the lingo is there, so you
Yep.
get those little updates along the way.
Well, you know, your superintendent's report, this is
Right.
a community
Sure.
project, so hopefully that's a little more out
So,
there.
Yeah, go ahead.
this, so when I was with Dr. Boston the other day, we've got a couple things, I think this is a good spot where we talk about our, there's the issues list, and we've talked a lot before about the vision, the EOS model of the vision trackers and, having your level 10 meetings and like, let's move it along, we've got issues, we gotta put this over here somewhere. We sometimes get mired in, okay, did this issue get resolved? Do we have the bus drivers? Did we get the lunch menus out? All of those things that we don't need to know because it's an operational thing, yet we still kind of want to know that it's resolved. So you've got those things that are out there. So you'll notice like a little tab of issues list. Like these are the things that sometimes we need to be reminded of or say, yep, check, it's done. But when we think about this big picture, if you will. One of the things Dr. Fossum was talking about, she put together a version of this. I said, well, imagine, if you will, looking forward, when you start having work streams in this area. It's not this necessarily, but this is similar to something that Kristen put together, saying, well, this culture for learning, maybe there are things that are happening along the way, and when are they reported out? So I even just used the strategic plan and said, okay, Dan can tell us, these are some things we're working on. We're working on the competencies. We're working on all of these. And where the little dots are, these are when he's supposed to report out to us, or he's going to communicate out to the community. It doesn't necessarily have to be this.
Feel good?
Do you like this?
Yeah, I do.
This was a Dr. Fossum, like,
This is great.
beginning
Yeah,
of a tool. But this is something, this is not something that,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
that it turns into
Yeah.
some sort of mechanism, but also so that we're not bombarding with, did this get resolved, did that get
Yeah.
resolved? We've got those things handled someplace, and then we've got the big vision stuff.
And I like that.
Communication, so
Yeah.
from a board to superintendent and from a board to the community, that communication is very consistent,
Yeah.
rather than, I don't know, let me check on that, right?
Right,
It's-
right.
yeah, It's very
And-
consistent.
I like how we've got these larger strategic elements that are going to, again, bring about the leverage to move us to our desired state and the accountability and tracking of all that. And then I love this other tab of the issues list, because you're right, there are day-to-day issues that crop up that we wanna track, we wanna be able to talk about, but we don't wanna confuse the two.
Right. And again, when I have these in here, where it says culture for learning, those were literally just placeholder examples of
Yeah.
how you could get, it moves into that project management piece of how people are being reported out on. So it may not be this, but Dr. Fossum put a draft of this together, so I decided to modify it with some of the words that are already here, so.
So thank you, Suzanne. These words, we may keep them and we may modify them a little bit, but it's just trying to give you an idea here of the system that we've got moving forward. And then lots of communication, obviously, around these pieces here that will.
Did you see I
happen.
stuck in that state of the district thing in May?
Yes.
Well, we gotta have goals.
Right, exactly.
Because wouldn't that be fantastic?
It would be wonderful.
Yes.
It would be wonderful. And gives me something new to talk about as well.
Yeah, well, and then as you go through, then it becomes, these are the stories that you're telling each year. But see how it could be in the buckets, every year you say,
Yep,
here are some
here's-
cool things we're doing over the next few years,
And-
targets on the wall.
Yes, and this fits with what we talk about many times internally in instruction. We call this, vertical spiral, that you're going around something that feels familiar, but when you come around it the next time, you're at an elevated level of either understanding, execution, quality, whatever it may be on that. And obviously, our thought is we're gonna have these competencies, but we're gonna get better and better at them as we move along with time, and as we collect feedback and the like as we go.
Well, this is the one other thing that, I did capture this after when we had Beth, that's why I put it somewhere. In this case for change, there's a draft little one-pager that was started already. And it was a little, you got your winning aspiration, and then there was the case for change. And then we were already talking about how do you share this out with people? So already thinking, here's some scenarios that exist right now, this is where it would resonate with people down the road. Imagine a board disengaged student. So then how does the future state of Forest Hills address the board student? How does the future state address the highly motivated student? And then we always have talked about these students, I don't know what I want to be doing, I want to go to college, that's what we call them, the uncertain. You're already thinking ahead to this case for change. Maybe some of these stories could be fleshed out with some of these people. When you say pressure testing, that you see that you can lay this out and present this to a business leader, present this to a teacher, and they say, yes, I see that student, I want school to be like that, so that kid, I can relate to that student. So that's kind of that expanded piece. So it's 30,000 foot with a little more context.
And I love that, and I love the idea of actual students at some point in the future being able to provide testimonials to this, to say, I was the student and then here's how, you know, the school district came alongside to help me and
Well,
pretty much.
these are called customer journeys.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Thank
what do
you.
those customer journeys look
Yeah.
like? Experiences, however you wanna put them, but you can start to put stories to each one of those
Yeah.
journeys, right, as you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so those were just some of the notes that were kind of captured in that final little
Yeah.
hurrah.
Then you've got a bunch of notes here too.
Oh, just a couple of things.
That's nice.
Looked at, that was just stuff, my footnotes, such a.
So we just wanted to,
Didn't know it was
again,
a-
a huge thank you to Suzanne. Suzanne put this together and, you know, she has worked with Jim, she's worked with other organizations on this type of work. It is a tremendous gift, thank you.
And if I would have had a little more time this fall, I could have done
I-
a little
I
bit more,
understand.
but there were some
So,
other things preoccupying us.
She shared this with me and I said, thank you, this is a huge, huge help on all this. And you're not going away. Yeah, so we know where to find you, we know how to engage with you on all that, so.
Before we let Jim go, what questions do you have for Jim that he could address now or that we could make sure that we're incorporating in? So I guess we'll start over here. Any immediate
I don't know if it's
questions?
necessarily for Jim, but just a general question, when you have these focus groups, is Jim there?
Yeah,
Jim
Beth
there.
and I will be co-facilitating.
You have prior already, or you're going to
I'm
start?
sorry, what?
You've already been at the focus groups?
No, these will be, I
I didn't
think
know.
we have 2 tentative dates in January, but
Okay.
we're doing it after the holidays and.
I just was curious, the level of, and so this would be done for you guys, unless you have not been there either, the ones that have already happened. The level of engagement from the community members, and are people actually contributing to the conversation?
Jim has been at those.
Jim did, Jim
Yeah.
Oh, okay, just
facilitated,
said
he
No, no.
But he hasn't
facilitated
been
the
the focus
meetings.
groups, those have.
Yeah, so just
No focus group.
we've had a number of big sessions with we have 2 groups of
Yeah.
17.
What do
I
you-
facilitated those.
What do you call those? We're not focus groups, what are we? Because
The
there's should be some
strategic planning
confusion.
sessions.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so-
strategic.
But those are with community members.
Yes.
Those are invited
Yeah,
parents.
that's-
Yes.
So
That
the
was-
question is like, what is the level of engagement that you're getting from the community
Oh,
members?
it's huge.
Okay, I just didn't know, I didn't know.
I mean, and there's, if you're interested, there are write-ups. I mean, I've
Yeah.
given you guys write-ups on all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
tons of things.
I've really been impressed, we have not had to pull teeth, I mean, people are
Okay.
talking and talking
Good.
and sharing all sorts of things, and yeah, they've been lively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been, I mean, just trying to keep everybody on this, 17 people's a lot to facilitate. But it's been very productive, I think. We've got a lot of great information. We did a SWOT analysis, a lot of really great feedback, I think, and a lot of energy, I would say.
Okay.
So I think the focus groups will be different because they'll be much smaller, much more targeted. We will have essentially, which Beth is working on right now, but we'll essentially have a script that we run through, so we're getting the same conversation, the same questions with all of the people that we're doing it with, so we can really judge their feedback and everything. But I think it's a great next step to take. I mean, if any of you have worked with, in a company, you do focus groups with customers or whatever, and I mean, it's super powerful. So I think it's the right way to go. We'll learn a lot.
I'm curious on the focus groups, like how, like I think it was asked before, how we're getting these people, because I'm wondering if we're getting, I want to make sure that we're going to be getting a really good cross-section, because typically if you go in and you like ask the PTO president, the school
Yeah.
principal, you're going to be getting the parents of kids who are engaged and are happy and are working hard, and you're going to
Yeah.
miss the kids, because those parents aren't as engaged, they're not as involved.
We were initially talking about some of the people that were in this group, but
Right.
some of those people were gonna be there, so I don't know if you were gonna expand beyond that. But you're right, it's nice to get somebody other than the one that's already
Yeah.
Already super
sharing their two
involved.
cents.
Yeah, because you're gonna have skewed thoughts if you're all, if you're preaching to the choir.
It's gonna be inherently limited.
Right.
It's not, what is there gonna be 10 total people, 15 total people? I mean, is there smaller groups, a couple of them? Is that the goal for these folks here?
Yeah, it'd be like 6 people.
Yeah, so I mean,
Per
it's
group.
gonna
Yeah,
it's gonna
so,
be
And we do 6 groups, maybe. We
Yeah,
don't do
6
this.
okay, so.
yeah, so you can get 30-some
Yeah.
people that you'll talk to on that.
But some of the people from this group before, I mean, I was thinking it was gonna be that, but you could bring in some fresh.
Yeah, we should.
And administrators know their families, say, where's the board kid, the engaged kid, the I don't know kid?
And they know the staff.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
That
they know how to do that.
I heard from you were saying it would be good to have, maybe.
What I'm saying, I mean, you got 17 people in this initial group.
34.
34.
34.
Two groups of 17.
And if you look at percentage, I mean, of people who would be impacted this, and I would immediately think about teachers.
Yeah.
And that if you had 17, I'm stepping back from 34 because it was pretty equivalent for the 17 in each group, you've got over 5 administrators or leaders in the district, 5 parents, and 2 teachers. And that doesn't seem like a balance to me.
No, we've got more than that.
Maybe you have 2 teachers.
We've got,
Well, I was just looking at that list,
Okay.
that's all,
it-
and the list
it-
of
at
teachers
least-
per step.
there's at least 4. But you're correct,
But this is,
as we, just to speak to that, as we put this group together, we didn't want the groups to be so large that were unwieldy at first. We wanted to make sure we had some board members and some district level administrators there, because this is work that, and we've talked about this before, that they've got to be able to deploy and lead on this. And we wanted to make sure, absolutely, that we had teachers and parents and community members in on this. So it's sort of trying to be economical with the cross-section of all of the,
some of these would be, responsible for executing on
Yep.
this. These are some pretty specific people that were in this group. For example, like, I was very intentional when we were talking, like, we were not gonna be filling it up. We had Mary do it and Nicole do it, because they would have been departing the board, and CJ, as the newest person, but intentionally left the rest of us off, that we weren't filling up seats there, but also offering.
Well, it makes sense that there'd only be one board.
Right. Well, but even with that, there's other venues to get the
I think the usual
discussion.
necessary,
Yes,
you know what we're saying,
yes,
you
yes.
fill it up with
Yep.
stakeholders.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jim? Because I know he has a few other projects. I know he has a few other projects, and he has.
I got homework from her, actually.
Yes, he has other projects, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you, Jim, thanks for the work.
Good.
Thank you, thank you for all your help. Yeah, hopefully you're seeing, some movement as we're moving along here. And again, this may seem like we're taking some time in these spots, but we're trying to get this front end part correct.
So we're gonna take as
there's a
long as it
solid
took.
foundation to build on this part here so that we get out into this.
Before you leave though, I think that was one question I thought, because it does take a long time to do projects like this, and especially with holiday breaks and different
Yeah.
things going, it's just the timeline changes. And I think as a board, you're gonna have some new people in different states. Looking at this project, the board has to be on board. So you're gonna get to points where you're wondering, why are we doing this again? Because it seems, I mean, and you can talk more too, because you've been through it a lot of times, but what's the statement? Is it the winning aspirations, the guiding principle that the board needs to go back to when they're, okay, why are we doing this? Because they're gonna have to explain it to the new people, and then as well, community members. We're spending money on what, because people ask for checks, they want to see, what are these checks going for? And we need to be able to say, this is why we're on board.
So to reground ourselves.
Yeah, but
in the
things
future
are
when
like,
things are-
okay, we're
yeah.
calling questions, or
Right.
it's just,
Why are we
where we
doing
want
this?
it to go, and,
I think it's that winning aspiration statement, right?
I think so,
I
but I
think-
just was wondering if there's a.
Well, I
advice.
would go beyond that, because for me, it gets real when you talk about real stories of real students.
Yeah.
So the winning aspiration is kind of the capstone of that. But what got me involved, that I was intrigued by, when you're talking about how many students do you ask to describe school in a way, it's boring.
Yeah.
Right? And in today's world, I mean, your goal is to turn out young adults who are, we talked about, resilient, creative, love life, lifelong learning. I mean, those are people that will make our community, will have great lives, they'll be leaders. That's why you're doing it. I mean, the winning aspiration is your statement around that, but and the more individual stories you can talk about, the better, in my mind.
I think this is
powerful.
very necessary. With a district this size, I mean, it's very easy to lose touch from the top to the bottom and all the places in between.
Yeah.
I mean, this is important.
Well, and all of you should, you gotta be ambassadors, right? Because once we start doing focus groups, I think, the people we've had, the 34 we've had, like you said, they weren't totally bought in when they went in the door, but
Right.
they're positive, energetic, they wanna be engaged. We should pull in a broad group, you guys still have to define it for the focus groups, but, you should be prepared with, word may start getting out in the larger community once we start doing that.
And that's the goal of this, is to let, there's a direction that people can rally behind. And I think that, to your point, Carl, thinking about the new board members have to come in and say, yeah, we see why we're doing this, and know that it's the long game. It's the long game, yet we're still holding Dan accountable for all the day-to-day along the way, and then also moving forward on these big things, that we're doing more of this, but it's the long game.
It's gonna take a long-term commitment.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank goodness we got CJ on here. He's on. Here's, look at him, he's young and energetic.
8 more now, that's 2 + 6.
Young, energetic. Yes, good.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Take
Jerry.
care. See you.
Thank you. Good, all right. Well, with that, if there are no other comments on that, I think we need to.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
It's not really a Jim question, but when Jim said not everybody was bought in when we came into our meetings of 17, I didn't get that impression at all. Am I?
No, it just,
I misunderstood
they weren't
that.
there yet. We hadn't presented anything yet.
It's sort of
Yeah.
a strategic plan, not the
Right.
vision. I mean,
Right.
I think,
Right.
okay, good. I just didn't know what the it was.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Just making sure I didn't miss something.
Yep.
Good.
Okay, so I can just move us right into closed session,
Need a
correct?
motion.
You need a motion,
Oh,
yeah.
yes, okay. May I have a motion to move into closed session?
I move we move into closed session.
All right,
For the purpose.
thank you.
You
For
can
the,
say
oh,
that.
yes, for the purpose, may I have a motion to move into closed session?
Yes, I move that we move into closed session for superintendent's advantage.
Thank you. For a second? Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We are back in
Excuse me.
open session of our special meeting. Superintendent Beam, is there anything else you want to cover today while we're here?
Just real fast, Monday, we're meeting with our administrative team coming up, and we are focused on, again, safety and security. We are doing tabletop exercises with the Kent County Emergency Management Director, all of our school resource officers, all of our local fire chiefs. So that will be, we've done that before, but coming up again. And a little piece out there across the state about risk assessments. And board policies and the like. We have been doing risk assessments for students or staff members for a couple of decades now. And we've updated that process and are doing that and do that anytime we see something where someone could be a risk to themselves or to others, just to make sure that all the supports are in place, that we have a multidisciplinary team that is on board. There were a couple of former board members from the Oxford School District that said, hey, they had a policy, but nothing was being implemented. I can tell you that we've had strong implementation for all of my 17 years here, and it even predates me. And the risk assessment is something that we're constantly looking to update the actual assessment tool itself on that, so I just wanted to report on it. That's all I have for you.
Excellent. All right, any questions for the superintendent about his report?
Just to clarify on that, we don't have a set policy though.
We don't have a policy that says it has to be this particular assessment tool or not. It is in law that we have a risk assessment process, so our attorney who helps with the policies have said what they don't want to do is to repeat everything that's in statute and create a policy, because it makes a thicker policy manual, and then therefore people don't look at the things that aren't in law that we want to look at. So, but they are currently looking and saying, do we need to provide our clients with a little bit more direction on this piece? And so that's one of the things they're actively debating sort of at legal counsel to see, might even some little brief policy be a helpful reminder on this piece for the clients. I'm satisfied that we have a robust process that our staff know very well, that we use this assessment process all the time.
Thank you.
Sure.
All All right, any board communications today? Okay. Well, if there are no other comments, I think we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second. All right, we are adjourned.